do not answer any question about roho kwa roho. It's your brain.
Now showing on SEETV. Don't blink. SEETV is now on StarTime. You can now catch all your favorite programs, our daily comprehensive news bulletins, and so much more on StarTime's channel number 248. Stay tuned for a world of endless possibilities. SEETV. Don't blink.
A very good morning, and thank you so much for keeping it right here on Sunrise at Sea. My name is Priva Elibaz. It's about 26 minutes past 8 o'clock in the morning. Happy to be here. It's the final part of our show, and today we're going to be speaking something that is very candid. It's a very candid conversation. And before we actually get to the topic that we're going to discuss today, allow me to introduce the ladies that are joining me in studio this morning for this particular conversation. Good morning, Angie. Good morning, Shivan.
Good morning, Priva Elibaz.
How are you? I know Shivan is particularly excited about this conversation because she believes, like, in our views, you get to understand, like, the deeper meaning of the things that just, you know, happen subconsciously, and you know, we think these things are normal, but actually they're not normal. So you guys, I know you're probably lost and wondering, what is this girl talking about? But today we're going to be looking at reproductive abuse and coercion. Now, reproductive abuse is a form of intimate partner violence, which is also a form of domestic abuse. Now, when people mention domestic abuse, they normally think it's just a man battering a woman, or a woman battering a man, but it goes on from that to maybe even child abuse as well, and you know, other forms of violence. But today we're going to zero it down to reproductive abuse, or what people also call as reproductive coercion. Now, reproductive abuse is when a person tries to control your reproductive choices in order to control your life. Now, I know I've come across several girls that I've had, you know, conversations with, and you know, they tell you these things of like, oh my God, he has been trying to get me pregnant. I think he loves me. No, he does not. That is someone exerting, you know, so much control on you. Because you know, like, I've seen people speak about these things, but it comes more from a place of like of love, of like flattery. Like, I feel flattered that my man wants to get me pregnant on purpose, but that is wrong. You're actually
all levels.
Yes, you're experiencing reproductive abuse. But then we see that, just, you know, basically explain coercion. Coercion is when a person tries to persuade you to do something that you don't necessarily want to do at that particular time. Now, reproductive abuse can include sexual assault, like I mentioned. It can include rape. Yes. It can also include other abusive actions concerning your sexual and reproductive health. Now, I know I mentioned rape, and just to clarify, reproductive abuse normally manifests itself in people who are in relationships. Yes, a man and a woman, either you're cohabiting, girlfriend and boyfriend, you're married, it doesn't matter as long as you're in a relationship. Or even if you've separated, as long as someone is exerting that control concerning your sexual and reproductive health, then it becomes reproductive abuse. Now, some of the ways that we can understand reproductive abuse is that, number one, there are always sexually coercive behaviors. For example, like when your partner pressures or forces you to have sex when you don't want to have sex. You know, it's so weird. It's so weird how these things happen. I remember I was on Twitter some time back, and there was a space, and these gentlemen were talking about cheating and basically infidelity, yes? And this man, a well-respected man, by the way, was talking, and he said, for example, when he wants to have sex, and maybe let's say the wife is not feeling well, or maybe sick, or has like an infection or anything like that, all he has to do is wear a condom, and then he will have the sex. And I'm thinking, how inconsiderate is that? Why should you have sex with someone who is actually not feeling well just because you want it for yourself? That was also a form of reproductive abuse. Absolutely. But people did not realize that. Well, some of the other ways is that a person has threatened to end a relationship if you do not have sex with them. The other sign is if a person forces a sexual partner to not use birth control, including a condom, contraceptive pills, or other available options. It also manifests if a person intentionally exposes the sexual partner to an STI, or retaliates against a sexual partner when told about a positive STI result. Then we also have other forms like birth control sabotage. For example, when a person hides, withdraws, or destroys a sexual partner's birth control pills, replaces or tampers with a sexual partner's birth control pills without the partner's knowledge or consent. Then also breaks or pokes holes in a condom on purpose, removes a condom during sex without telling his or her sexual partner, refusing to withdraw during sex even if they previously agreed to do so. And other forms include pregnancy pressure, which is when a person basically pressures their sexual partner to, one, get pregnant when they are not ready to get pregnant, or continue with the pregnancy when they could, very much have the other option of abortion if they're not ready. And then the other bit is that a sexual partner forces you to end a pregnancy of which you want to continue that particular kind of pregnancy. So I feel like I've given the best preamble when it comes to reproductive abuse, and I hope people at home at least are able to understand what we are referring to. Now, these are things that happen to us in our daily lives, like, we experience them, we don't know them, but they're actually happening to us. So the question that I'm going to pose to you ladies, what are the warning signs of reproductive abuse? Because we start relationships, it's the usual, fun games, you're talking to each other, endless texts, endless calls, and all those things. When do things turn around?
You see, at the beginning of a relationship, I'm sure, what the ideal should be, you should have a conversation and maybe agree that at a certain age or at a certain point in the relationship, that is when you'll have children. But one of the warning signs you can tell is when you have agreed on it, and then 2 days, 3 months into the relationship, the man is telling you, but why are we using condoms anymore? Why should we use pills? Why don't we have children? Why are you coercing me about something we already talked about? Why are you going ahead? Already, you very well know I'm working, I'm not ready to be a mom, but you're forcing me to go ahead and be a mother. That is a decision that should be made by the both of us. Why is it only about you? For me, I would tell those are the first signs that this is actually someone who is going to infringe on your reproductive system, because at the end of the day, as women or as men, it's only us who understand our bodies. I am the one who is able to tell that now I'm in my safe days. Why am I telling you that I'm in my unsafe days and you're insisting to still be intimate with me? Make it make sense. So for me, I would say those are the first signs that you can tell. But also in relation to what you mentioned, things like withdraw when you do not withdraw. Someone intentionally, nowadays even men intentionally put holes
in the condom,
on condoms
without
that they're going to use. That is reproductive abuse. You're doing it without my consent. And what really, I think really aggravates me and gets me very angry is that very many times, like you have mentioned, these are things that women don't know. When we see our men do it, we say, oh my God, she's trying to get me pregnant. He wants to walk down the alley. No, don't be stupid. He's reproductive abusing you in every way.
Yes.
Well, I think you've actually... but here's the thing. I just want to say one thing, that this not only happens on the side of women, it also happens to men.
Yeah, yes.
True. Earlier you talked about, pricking...
Actually, you've preempted my further question, because I
because
wanted to ask, does this actually majorly affect women or even men are victims?
It really cuts across. There are certain women who will walk into a man's life, and depending on their intentions for the relationship, there is that one who will look at this and it's like, oh my God, that's a billionaire right there. I want to live the soft life. So what do I have to do if the man is not willing to make me pregnant or, to have a family with me? Let me just do what I have to do as a human being. Well, we've had those stories in the media, everywhere. So yeah, they prick the condom, and before you know it, she's pregnant, and she tells you, well, I'm pregnant for you. And not because they actually love you or they want to be with you, but because they are looking at the bigger picture of what they want to get from you. So that happens to both men and women. But if you find yourself in a situation where your partner, now this I think stems from some kind of insecurity, for your partner to tell you that to prove your love for me, or maybe your loyalty to me, that you're mine and mine alone, then get pregnant for me. So many girls have been trapped in this kind of situation. So many girls, I must say. So you're getting pregnant for this one because you're trying to prove your love for them, because you're trying to prove your loyalty to them, that you will not be engaging with any other person. And yet what you're doing is you're feeding their insecurity. Yeah? So you're getting pregnant for the wrong reason. So if you find yourself in a position where your partner is telling you that, please do run for your life. Do not even think twice. That is not someone who loves you. That is someone who is very egocentric and thinks about themselves alone. And also, if you find yourself in a situation where I don't know how to. It has actually skipped my mind. It has skipped my mind. Please go on now. When I get it back,
I hope
we'll
you
get
remember
back
it
to
yeah,
there,
down
yes.
in the conversation. Well, what I have to say about the warning signs of, I mean, I'll get into the risk factors, including individual factors, societal factors, as well as relationship factors. But I think the reason, the warning sign of reproductive abuse is number one, the person first comes with control. I don't think there is any incident where, you know, we've talked about sexual violence or anything like that without the partner first exerting some sort of, you know, control. They will first control you in other aspects, like, you know, your independence when it comes to the economic situation. Are you able to hold down a job? Or are they telling you, you know, keep home or stuff like that? Like, I feel like for me, those are some of the warning signs. Like, someone first exerts control before they get to
A point where
yes, control your reproductive health choices. But we see that some of the individual factors as to why people do some of these things or find themselves in reproductive abusive relationships is that number one, young age plays a factor. People don't know better. People are just young. Yes.
And young or naive, or both.
Even young, because you know, I don't want to say wisdom rather comes with age, because we talked about it some time back, and you know, it was our opinions were different in that.
It was a heated discussion. Yes, it was. But yes, young age plays a role. People are young; they don't know any better, and especially for our men, I don't know. People normally say this, like, women somehow advance faster than men when it comes to some of these situations. Like, you wouldn't compare a 25-year-old woman, the knowledge they have right now, with a 30-year-old man when it comes to these things. Like, I feel like a woman is more ready, or more, how would I put it? They're more ready to for that time in their life.
Yes, that women are way beyond men. Like at the age of 20, I would think like a man at the age of 30.
25. Oh yeah.
Yes, like that is how it is.
Absolutely, yes. You may not have heard of it, but it's something that people normally speak on.
It's relative, really, and subjective, I should say.
I still don't think so.
Haven't you met like a 27-year-old gentleman, and you are like also like the same age, and you know the way they think, the way they articulate issues, the way they handle situations is like.
No,
absolutely
you
not.
haven't.
Not.
Well, I have met some of them. I think I'm lucky.
You see, when you get to have the deeper conversations, on the surface they may look like they understand what's going on, but the more you keep having deeper conversations with them, the misogyny will come out. All these things will start popping up, and you remember, like, oh, he's young. He needs more
Start
time.
by asking him about
subjective.
the legislative assembly and see if he knows. Then you realize.
Well, some of the other individual factors include low level of education, and that's very key, because I mean, if you haven't had some sort of literacy and traveled and, you know, associated yourself with opinions of other people, it can be very hard for you to know better. So low level of education also plays a role. Then we also have the bit of these grown-up adults witnessing violence as children. You've seen your father directly tell your mother, like, you have to produce every year, like, I want you to have 12 kids, I want you to have 10 kids, when initially your mother really just wanted to have 2 kids and call it a day. Then we also have, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say I'll give an example, which I don't know, you mentioned yesterday, of Nick Cannon.
Yes.
And some African men, they say that some African men, you, just like you mentioned, you know, are always forcing their wives, or, you know, the women they're with, to produce more and more children. And the reason they give for this is, you came to get married. What are you supposed to do in marriage as a woman? You're supposed to produce. It's like produce and fill the world. And if you cannot do the job, someone else will do the job. That's the Nick Cannon kind of, you know, thing. So as a woman, you get insecure. You want your man to yourself. You don't want your man to have other. They call them concubines. Those ones,
concubines, yes, mistresses.
Mistresses. And you find yourself in a position where you're just giving birth, because you want to please your man, because you want to fulfill their desires. It's very disheartening.
I think as we move on with the show, I'm going to ask you guys, like, why women don't actually leave men who showcase this pattern of behavior. I'm going to get into that later on. But moving on, some of the other individual factors include personality disorders. Then there's also the bit of acceptance of violence, like, you know, a man is supposed to do everything they feel like they can in your society, so they transfer that into their marriages. Then we also have the bit of sexual abuse during childhood as well. Yes, you've done it to me, I'm going to do it to someone else. Or better yet, I'm going to have a different way of how like my trauma from childhood is going to like manifest itself in the present situation.
There's something you mentioned among the individual signs, and I think we are not, we need to call out on society and some of the cultural practices we have, because now that I think about it, when I think about things like pulling, that is reproductive abuse. If I do not want to do it, why am I, like you said, why am I being forced to do it? Because, and you know the funny thing about all this is that at the end of the day, all these reproductive abuse in form of cultural practices are done because we are pleasing who? A man. You're pulling because you're doing.
But it's also a two-way street, because no. It's a two-way street, and this is why I say so. We've had people like talk about things like I want a man who is circumcised, yes, and we've had also women actually force men to go for circumcision, even when they don't want to do so.
That makes sense.
You understand how it can go like both ways.
That absolutely makes sense, but it still
talk about
doesn't.
circumcision.
You guys, we'll get to the societal thing. Is in the interest of time, let's just slide through this conversation. Well, we have also the history of abusive parents. I think I mentioned that as well. Then we have exposure to other forms of prior abuse. Like your life is just centered around abuse. Then we also have relationship factors, and these relationship factors include conflict and dissatisfaction in a relationship. You want to have a child, I don't want to have a child. You understand? And I think, we'll get into that actually once we move on. Then we also have the bit of economic stress. You know the times we're in right now.
Yeah.
You are a woman, you don't want to have numerous children because at least economically you won't be able to take care of them. But here you have a man who's not willing to use any form of contraception, yes, to prevent you from getting pregnant, and here you are producing kids every other year.
Like a bunny.
Because you have like a bunny. I had rabbits produce.
Bunnies are beautiful.
every month. Yes.
They're beautiful until when you have to take care of them.
Yes, then the other relationship factors also include having multiple partners. You guys mentioned it. I think Aggie talked about it. Like, if you don't do it, there is a person X who is willing to do it.
But also, let's call out those standby people. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
We are coming. We also realize we cannot support all women. Yes. Like, there's some women that make it hard for you to actually defend and support. Now, let's get to the community and societal factors. Number one, there is gender inequitable social norms, especially those that link notions of manhood to dominance and aggression.
Yes.
Mentioned that. Then there's poverty. Poverty really plays a role. There's nothing that increases problems in a household like poverty.
Like poorness.
Poverty.
When all you have to do is sleep and make babies.
That is why I keep
I'll give an example. When you're going to Bundibujo district, it's very hilly. So I think there's a time we're going for a trip in Toroko district, Semliki and all that. And then when you look at, it's a place
tourism ambassador. I hope that Ministry of Tourism is watching.
But when you look at the weather, when it's like about, actually like 2 p.m. in the afternoon, the weather is, it's how do they call it? Snowy. It's snowy and all that, and it's very cold. Foggy. That is the word.
Snowy, yes.
And what happened? Yeah, we actually might have snow in Uganda. But imagine it's 2 p.m. It's very foggy. And all people are doing is they wake up in the morning. If it's foggy, they'll go back to bed. So all they have to do is keep making babies and babies and babies. And that is a factor. A characteristics of people from Bundibujo, people from Kabale, Kisoro, the hilly and mountainous areas in Uganda. So yes, I agree with what you say.
Let me give an insight on some of the places with cold weather as I'm from the west, but anyway, let's continue.
So continuing with the community and societal factors, we also see that the low social and economic status of women also contributes to this reproductive abuse. Then we also see there's weak legal sanctions against reproductive abuse in marriage. I talked about rape, and I think that's one of the biggest debates that have ever happened when it comes to marriage. Like, can a person be raped in a marriage?
Oh yes, absolutely.
But 100%. Men think that's impossible.
For as long as you are forcing me to have sex with you and I haven't consented to it, then that is rape.
But then
guys, how many times have people consented or asked?
Exactly. Or how many women
expressly they're like, Aggie, I'm feeling you, let's do it. And you're like,
yes. There are some who actually express it, and when you tell them that, I'm not ready, maybe I'm not feeling well, they'll force themselves on you.
But
some husbands have done that to their women.
How many women in marriages know that when your husband forces you to have intimacy without your consent, it is a crime?
But
No,
now
we
some
do
women
not
make
do
that.
that. Because
Some
in
women.
our minds, we are thinking, this is my husband. He has a right to my body. He has a right to open and close. When I say no, so you see, also in a way, we are to blame because we also don't know our rights.
And we are to blame majorly because there's some women who engage in bondage sex, that type of thing. Like I've read things online where people feel like, you know, it's okay for a man to just come and they start having sex with you. Like it's almost like rape, but it's like, yes, I wanted to experience that, and you wonder.
Experience what?
Yes, you experience.
Go for nyege.
And the other thing, just besides that, I think it's also, stems from our aunties and our, I'm sorry, I will say mothers, because yes, some mothers do ill-advise their daughters and tell them you should never deny your man or your husband sex.
Exactly.
If your husband wants, please be ready any minute, whatever time they want. I think there's a time as having a conversation with a man. I'm going to say this, it's a little bit disgusting, but I will say it because I was disgusted, and I think I should put it out there. For a man to say that it doesn't matter for a woman whether it's that time of the month, if you are my wife and I want to have it, I'm going to have it. How can you be very insensitive with, you know, what women go through, the menstrual cramps and all that during that time? It's very difficult, the wild emotions, and someone is not in position to do that. Why would you force yourself on them?
Men have had sex with
very
women who have just
disturbing.
given birth.
Yes.
My
Yeah,
friend.
very
Like,
disturbing.
Absolutely. Even those that are pregnant and expecting to deliver.
yes,
they
pregnancy.
Still do.
It's actually encouraged. Actually, it's encouraged
but
for people
to-
to have a lot of sex during pregnancy. Cause
Even till the end.
yes, till like the very final day, because it helps you push.
We don't know
It helps you
that.
push the baby. I know that information. Yes, I know that information. But let's switch gears and talk about something else. When it comes to reproductive abuse, why don't women leave? Especially, or not even. Let me not put it to women. Let me say, why don't victims leave when they actually realize that their partners have this cycle of reproductive abuse?
Society. If I've been brought up in a culture, in a home where I've been told the major reason as to why you pulled is to make sure the man enjoys you while, you know, he's having intimacy.
Fun.
And then...
But it's true.
Yes,
That's the reason.
true.
Yes.
But that's the reason. That is the only reason I would stay. I've been told I must stay and make sure I satisfy the man. If the man is saying I'm going because you're not doing this and this, then I will stay. Because I don't want to lose my home, because I don't want to look like a disappointment.
Oh yeah.
Then also the aspect of when, for example, talking about birth control and all this, if this is something that the man wants, and as a woman, a career is something you want to chase, and for you, the man matters most, or marriage is important, there are women who have left their career and chosen to take care of their men, yet their men are bringing nothing to the table, apart from making them machines all the time.
Yes.
Machines.
Machines, that is very terrible to say, but anyway, but which is the truth.
It's the truth, yeah.
I would think one of them stems from insecurities, like personal insecurities as a human being. You might feel that you're in a relationship with this man or this lady and they're too good for you. And you feel like any minute someone is going to steal them away from you. And so what you have to do is try to trap them into, you know, getting pregnant, or even coerce them into getting pregnant, or them swearing their loyalty to you through getting pregnant for you, even without a commitment. And the other one, I would think peer pressure. I think it's more than ever lately, there's a lot of pressure surrounding marriage and commitment. When you find, you know, your peers are getting married and, you know, having babies, and then there's you who actually has no intentions at the moment to get pregnant or have a child. You're not prepared mentally, you're not prepared, you know, physically and whatever else it takes. But because you're looking at other, you know, your peers and age mates are getting married and then having children, you feel left out, and you're like, you know what, I think it's about time I have a child. The other one, I'll say it's very important. It's about ladies who always, you know, you're dating this guy, he's very rich, and for you, eyes on the prize, you're looking at the money, and then maybe even this guy doesn't even treat you right.
Again, rich men.
It should be like
And maybe he
slogan,
doesn't
eh? It
even
should be
treat
a
you
Twitter
right.
handle.
Or even the man says, I want to have a child with you, but deep inside your heart, you know you're not ready to have a child. But because eyes on the prize, you're looking at that beautiful car and that soft, beautiful life that you've always envisioned, you end up getting pregnant for them. Yeah.
Well, I think actually research suggests that most women who are in abusive relationships and actually experiencing reproductive abuse, they somehow come, they're not passive victims. They somehow find, you know, other ways they can cope with the situation, and, you know, other factors play into that whole situation. Who mentioned children? I don't know if any of you mentioned children, but women fear to leave their kids behind.
Yes.
If they, because in this African society, if you decide to leave your marital home, then the kids everyone thinks they should remain with the man. Yes, the man is the one who can take care of them,
And
so
so
they
the
should
man
remain
is
with
the
the
one
man.
who carried them. It baffles me, but anyway.
Yes, so well, some of the reasons why women do not leave their violent partners or those who have taken them through reproductive abuse is, number one, there's fear of retaliation. Then there's also lack of alternative means of economic support. I mentioned earlier on in our conversation that before it gets to reproductive abuse, your partner first exerts unnecessary
Sort of
control. Yes, that you're unable to make decisions for yourself, even including supporting yourself economically by having a job that brings in some sort of income for you. Then there's the concern for the children. Women do not leave because they're concerned. If I leave, what will happen to my children? If another woman comes and, you know, takes care of them, will I be at peace with that? So you find that there are different factors as to why women do not leave their violent partners. Then there's also lack of support from family and friends. You mentioned society, but then also family as well. And yes, I think we can all agree how how family can be funny, and also including friends as well.
Absolutely.
Then there's also stigma or fear of losing custody of children that is normally associated with leaving your partner. You know, Banange, she had 4 kids, she has failed. Now she's back, she has no one.
No one.
Then we also have the bit of love and the hope that the partner will change.
Love.
I don't know.
How? Why would you think that is love?
I don't know who taught women the concept that you can change a man. I don't know which university.
It's not even
It's
just
the
a man.
hope. You know, when you love someone, you always hope that they'll meet you at your level of, you know, understanding
never,
of
and
love.
The funny thing
And
is they never change. The moments the signs are evident. That is why the other day I was reading a story of like you said, you gave an example that also men fall prey of reproductive abuse. I was reading a story that happened in Kenya in Kimilili, and this particular couple had intimacy and the man was not ready to have kids. He had made it clear. So after, you know, the whole process, the woman gets the condom and empties everything that had taken place inside her
herself.
system. And I'm like, how, what level,
Inside her
what
system.
level
Oh
of
my God.
insanity is that, honestly? Like, why would you force a relationship to that extent? Unless it's Bill Gates, but guys, it's
Me, I
never
don't
worth
think
it.
it's actually
Even
love.
Bill Gates.
Both of you are mentioning that it's love, but me, I think it's just the idea of being in love. And also maybe you have met this guy and you know he seems like the ideal person, and then you have painted all these images of a beautiful life with them, you know, happy ever afters and all that. So it's more of the idea than the love, because love, I think when you love someone, you should be able to see right through their BS.
I don't think people understand what
Yes.
love is. We've not
Yeah,
yet reached the
so
level
many
where we
of us
understand
are
what
in love with
is.
the idea than love itself. Yes, I think
And
so.
you know, also, most importantly, I don't know, you guys, you probably never understood the cycle of an abuser. We talked about love
the
bombing
toxicity
before. I
and
don't know
all
if
that.
you were present for the conversation about love bombing, but this is what happens. This is what abusers do. So you get confused in the mix. Does he
be
love me?
bombed.
Is he going through an episode? Because one day he's bringing you flowers, one day he's giving you money to go do your hair, do some shopping, go out with your friends, and, you know, maybe start a business if possible, do something small for you. But before you know it, he's taking everything away from you.
Exactly.
You
It's taking
understand?
away your control, your
Yeah,
power,
so
your mind to
people
be.
may not necessarily be in love with the idea of being in love, but this is what their abusive partners are presenting to them. This is what they are showing them.
But also why are we
But you
settling
have to
for
break
less?
the cycle. Yes, at the end of the day, you cannot keep blaming it on the, oh, no, I was with a toxic partner, or I was with a manipulative partner. You should have been able to see those signs.
Okay, guys,
At
in
the
the interest
end-
of time.
for me, my last remarks would be, at the end of the day, for the women, and I'll speak to the women because I'm a woman, know your self-worth. Because the moment you know that, no one can tell you better. But I'm not talking about toxic self-worth, because also that one is a thing. I'm talking about healthy self-worth. If you have said, I am not ready to have a child, there is no
Stand by
reason
that.
as to why your man should coerce you into it. If you have said we are doing family planning, that should be it. I've come across women who have side effects when they take emergency contraceptive
yeah,
pill.
yeah.
So if you are that kind of person and you tell your man, you know what, I cannot take those pills, however, can we use a condom? And he's not willing to listen, that alone should
Move
be a
away.
red flag. Why are you in a
Run.
relationship like that?
The problem is we don't know how to run. As we wrap up the conversation,
Okay, no,
we
guys,
don't know how to run.
No, guys, we're not even wrapping the conversation. You
Hey,
just
I thought we were.
you're slurring the word. Yes, I wanted to just, you know, tap into the consequences of reproductive abuse. Just, you know, as we wrap up, because we have a couple of minutes left, but I want to pick your mind on consequences of reproductive abuse.
Of course, definitely, you'll find yourself when you've made very regrettable decisions. One of them is getting pregnant when you're not ready, and you find you don't have the finances, and also taking care of a child needs you to be in a stable mental state.
Space,
yes.
yeah.
So if you, some of these things you have to be prepared for them. I think, like, really take your time, prepare yourself, your mental, your physical, everything, and that includes getting pregnant. So yes, do not find yourself in a position where you are just getting pregnant because your partner wants you to get pregnant. Have you talked about it? Have you planned for it? It's very important to plan. And also, Siobhan mentioned that you should know your self-worth. That is very important. Stick by it. If you say this today, make sure you say the same thing tomorrow. Because some of us just say things and then this guy comes into the picture and you seem to forget your self-worth completely and you're back to ground zero. So don't find yourself in that situation. And also, I would say that I think we need to get more acquainted with counselors. It's very important. It could be a professional counselor. It could be even at a hospital, especially for people who want to, you know, if let's say you want to start contraception, you should go to a counselor and find out which contraception actually really works for you. Should you actually take this route or should you not, depending, because like I mentioned earlier, no regrettable decisions should be made, especially when you're conscious. Yeah.
Totally agree. Do you have anything else to supplement before we...
Stop watching too many movies, that is one. But also learn to stand your ground for the women out there. And always remember that you are the author of your decisions. Every single decision you make in life, there are consequences, either good or bad. And it's quite unfortunate that when you are born into a family, fortunately or fortunately, when you're born into a family, children do not choose who their parents are. So even you, as a mom, you have chosen a partner who is showcasing reproductive abuse. They are controlling when you get pregnant. They are controlling you even when you're in your menses. This is the exact same cycle. This is the kind of father he's going to be to your girls. That means even when you've produced children and your girls are going through their menses or they're having issues, he'll be like, get over it. That is a pain. But only a responsible man can understand and be like, oh, this is a situation that my girl is going through. But if already, as a partner, he's not giving that to you, what makes you think he'll do any better as a father of your children?
As a father later on in life.
Exactly.
Totally agree. So guys, I think the ladies have highlighted on sexual and reproductive health, how some of the consequences can happen in that area. They also talked about some of the mental health factors, which include, someone talked about self-esteem.
Self-worth.
Yes.
Self-worth, yes, yeah. What happens is that now when you're in this situation, this pattern, it ends up affecting your esteem. You find yourself having low self-esteem. You have eating and sleep disorders. You have physical inactivity as well. Like you're very, how would I call it? Demotivated, if I could say that. Then there's also alcohol and drug abuse because you're finding a way to cope with the situation. Now, I know right now in the corporate world, especially, people, you know, are getting hooked onto marijuana and all those things to calm their nerves, to reduce the stress and all. But yeah, that could happen if you're experiencing reproductive abuse. Then there's also the bit of self-harm, as well as, you know, unsafe sexual behavior. And of course, if you get pregnant, you're also at a risk. If you get pregnant when you do not want, you're at a risk of, you know, stillbirth. You're at a risk of, you know, miscarriages as well. And you're also at a risk of low birth weight. Also, people forget that actually being pregnant requires a lot of, preparation. Like you have to be mentally ready for that, or, you know, there are factors that come in along the way.
It's like making popcorn. Pop, pop, pop.
Yes, but well, before we call it a day, these are some of the best approaches that you can use to prevent reproductive abuse in your home. Not in your home, but generally looking from, you know, the home setting to the country setting as well, and basically how government can chime in and help these people in their domestic homes. Now, number one is that there should be reform civil and criminal legal framework that can address reproductive abuse. Then there should be also an organization of, you know, media and advocacy campaigns to raise awareness about the existing legislation, but also the causes and, you know, consequences of reproductive abuse. Then also there should be a strengthening of women's civil rights related to divorce, property, child support, and custody as well. You know, women need to understand their rights as well, that do not be scared and stay in an abusive relationship because you think some of these things, they're going to, you know, be taken away from you by default if you leave your abusive partner. Then the other bit, and finally, is that use behavior change communication to achieve social change. I think there are so many things that we could talk about, but basically, I would wrap up by saying provide early intervention services to families that are at risk of reproductive abuse. Well, the conversation is going to continue on our social media platforms. So, check us out on Instagram, check us out on Twitter, as well as Facebook at CTV Uganda. And, let us know what you think. What did you learn from this particular conversation that we had today? Have you experienced reproductive abuse? How are you willing to help people in your community and women be better, even men who are experiencing reproductive abuse? What are you willing to do to make sure this comes to an end on an individual basis? At least for that. Well, that wraps up what we had for you this morning on Our Views. My name is Priva Elibaz. This is Sunrise at Sea. Don't blink.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Sunrise at Sea this morning. We've had great conversations earlier on the Twitter jabs. We were joined by the Public Relations Officer from the Ministry of Health, and that is Mr. Emmanuel Ainebiona. And he was telling us everything, all the insight in regard to the Ebola outbreak that was discovered in Mubende district. At the moment, one person has passed, a 24-year-old male, and also 6 other cases are still under investigation at the Center for Disease Control. And he also talked about let every Ugandan at the moment be extra cautious, and they actually gave out a toll-free line in case of any suspected cases. You can be able to contact the Ministry of Health. And also, if you actually see or any signs and symptoms on yourself or even on other people, you can be able to visit any health center so that they can ascertain whether you have the Ebola virus or not. However, let's all be vigilant and be on our toes when it comes to prevention and the control of the Ebola virus. And also, we wrapped up the conversation, all the show, with the topic on reproductive abuse, yes. And also the ladies gave us a lot of insight, I must say. But one word that I will say is let's stop reproductive abuse. It's a very bad thing. You don't want to find yourself in that situation. You wouldn't want it for your friends or your family, and you shouldn't actually want it for any other person, even if you're not related to them. So let's put an end to that. Well, this conversation continues on our socials, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at CTV Uganda. If you missed out on this episode, you can be sure to catch up on our YouTube channel at CTV Uganda. Have a very good day.